So today we're gonna dive in, and the first topics of career planning that we're going to cover are if you get a book out of the bookstore somewhere, you can see that these are some of the topics that get covered in those. Okay, so one of the first things that career advice people say is to kind of get to know yourself, and that's obviously a lifelong process, or maybe it's not obvious, but it is. And so things like understanding what you enjoy and what is your personality like. Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? What are your skills, and what comes really easily to you, and what comes less easily to you? Let's see. Just going to a few people. Okay. So things to think about too are, what do you do? You don't hear this too often, but do you enjoy working indoors? Do you enjoy working outdoors? Do you like working in a lab or modeling, working with numbers or writing? What work will feel rewarding to you? What do you care about? So for example, maybe think about if you were not doing science, what would you do? And what career might you do? And for me, it was like social work or medicine when I was younger. And I didn't end up pursuing those for other reasons, but I ended up working in the field of education. And it's sort of a blend where I get to work with people, and it's rewarding, and it feels purposeful and meaningful to me. So, the books on careers say, basically, if you feel like it's meaningful and it's contributing, that your work, you will be more satisfied. Other things to consider, where do you want to live, and what kind of culture would you thrive in? Please feel free, by the way, to jump in with any questions or comments, and Elise, just dive in as well. So what is the difference between a resume and a CV? You've heard of both, and I'm sure. And really the difference is that a CV is used for academic job applications or applications to fellowships and grants. There's no length limit on these. They can be 5 pages, they can be 15 pages long. But it's generally for research positions. So maybe in a lab, like a research lab or university, and then for grad school. Whereas a resume is for anything else, basically. And they generally are 1 page. For early career, they'd be about 1 page, sometimes 1.5, maybe 2. It depends a little bit on the employer. So, and you can add things also to like LinkedIn addresses and so on. So generally speaking, CV is for academic stuff and resume is for everything else. And again, jump in if you have any questions or thoughts. So you'll know that you got to see that people who are reading these things, they want to see evidence of your skills and not just a list, because anybody can write down like, I know Python and I write well, but they want to see some evidence of what you mean and what you've done that would actually show that that's true. So for example, rather than just bragging generally, you might give examples and say, while I was in a course on groundwater hydrology, I was involved in a group project working with 3 people on solving some problem, and collaborated well and did problem solving skills and we used this software and that software. So in a resume, that'll be more brief, but in a cover letter, you can go into it some more. So then if somebody hears, oh, you worked on a project, it sounds like you work with people and you know how to do a team project and collaborate, and you use those softwares and programs in that project. So it's better than just saying, oh, I know how to do this. Employers actually look not just for the technical skills. The more you go to panel discussions like job panels, you'll find out from people that they really look for these other things, and leadership being one of them. What is leadership? Well, it's kind of things like going above and beyond, volunteering for things, having, doing the right thing if other people are not, like being an influence, helping people, having a strong work ethic. It all kind of comes under leadership. But you'll notice that the technical skills, they've got them in the right column here, but they're still very important. But these other things, they want people to be able to be good citizens of the workplace kind of thing. And by the way, Aditya, anyone else, please chime in if you have thoughts on this. Okay, so let's take a look at some resumes. There's no better way to know how to write your own resume than to read other people's resumes. And same goes for cover letters, because you start to see what you like or you don't like. So here's a resume, and I'm going to ask you to, a couple of you to maybe unmic, like turn on your mic, and tell me just at a glance, without even reading anything, what do you think and why? How does it strike you as a resume? And I might volunteer you if people don't volunteer themselves. Hopefully you don't mind.
I think it could be formatted better. It's like centered and kind of hard to follow.
That's right. So the layout is a little bit confusing visually, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the centered, it looks neat, but it looks congested. It feels like a lot on one page.
Yeah, I agree. And it kind of also reminds me of a poem. Like that's what I think of when I look at something like this. Congested is a good word for it. So you want to make things as easy to read as possible. And somehow it's like, it just becomes too chaotic, I think. I agree with you. Okay, let's go to another one. So here's one that has a lot. It's actually on the web. I got it. You can look up examples, good and bad examples. So this one, I want to point out some things first, and just so that I'll give you my opinion. Okay. First of all, don't put curriculum vitae at the top. Put your name. And then I would avoid putting your street address. I don't believe it's necessary. I think you can put your email, your telephone number, and your LinkedIn, and maybe the city or state. Really shouldn't be putting your birth date or your gender or whether you're single, and have an email that's more professional, like cool guy 007. Sometimes you see that and it's like, these are things. So that information is very personal and it's not really their business and they don't need it. So they've got this nice personal profile, and it's a fairly generic, but and people are now using these more and more, but they'll call it a summary. Then under education, I just want to point out that they're including nursery school, primary school, secondary school. Obviously, you're not going to do that. So in general, you don't even include high school unless there's something really stellar about it that you want to include. Here they've included some courses, and it's actually quite useful for people at early career stages to include some of your higher level courses so that people can see, oh, they've taken structural geology and they know mineralogy, things like that. What do you think about, okay, just asking you a question
I have
again,
a question.
please. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Kind of along the lines of what you just said. If you're someone who's left school and is maybe a year or two in their industry, but still kind of early career individual, how do you include things from college? Do you not include things from college?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, you want to include the college degree.
Yeah, of course. But
Right. And then
more so like work experience and things like that, internships.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful to list it, and even near the beginning, and just to say, this is my education, and you could put a one line of, what your project was on, or what you kind of emphasized, because sometimes the name of the department doesn't really tell for somebody. And then, yeah, internships, you can put relevant work experience and include internships and a variety of things. And even if you have had jobs like working at Target for a long time, those are skills that that you have that you should advertise. It may not seem relevant, and you could include it in under something like leadership, under a different section, like that you were responsible and reliable and that kind of thing. But it does go under work experience too.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say I work off of a resume, and I usually am not applying to academic or like higher ed position. So, but I've worked at a Chili's, well, used to work at a Chili's for like a significant portion of time. And in that time, I held a lot of positions. And so I was able to say, I I led the students with, or not the students, but I was responsible for organizing meals and making sure that they went out and communicating with the kitchen staff to ensure that proper. So those things are transferable and they're applicable. So I think it's a matter of your judgment, but I think anything where you can turn it into a positive could be beneficial to put under work experience.
Thank you. That's yeah, I like that a lot. And so if you look at this person's work, I mean, it's a pretend resume or CV, but they're not giving any detail about what they've done. They just put IT assistant, and it's just not enough information. So they're really shortchanging themselves. So you really want to add more. Generally, when I see people's resumes, they don't have as much information as they could. And they could brag a little more, if you know what I mean, and describe. As far as things like hobbies goes, so this needs more information. I would skip using the heading hobbies and instead turn this into things like, you can make your own headings, okay, on a resume. There's no rule about it. So you can have headings like community work or leadership or communication experience or skills, leadership experience. And that can include things like teaching Sunday school or being a coach on a kid's basketball team or something like that. Those mentoring a kid in the neighborhood. Those are valuable skills. So hobbies just sound so trivial, but actually all of those things require effort and responsibility and so on, and skills. Finally, skip putting references on. They will ask you for references if they want. It's a waste of your precious space. Steve, did you want to add anything?
I would just say to instead of putting references, at least indicate that references will be provided on request.
Thank you. Right. And that just takes one line.
Correct.
Okay. So now what do you think about this one? You can be honest.
Are pictures a good idea on a resume?
Pardon me?
Pictures?
Pictures. So that's a great question. In Europe, they do it. They all do it. Germany and wherever they have pictures. Here, no, not so. Like people, I don't see them ever. And so it's not really done, I think you could say, in the US. And there's some advantages to that, especially when biases come in and should it matter what you look like, for example. So I would say no, you don't want to put a picture. Anything else? Rosia?
I've heard, I like this, I think this is visually interesting, but I've heard from like recruiters and things that sometimes the simpler formatting is easier for their like automated systems to recognize. Like a lot of stuff goes through like some type of scanning, high level scan. And so if the formatting is unfamiliar to that like software, it will like kick it out.
Oh, that's so
And I
interesting.
don't know if that's true or
Yeah.
how.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think generally if you're in the area of like graphic design, sure, but in general, like especially academia, and I can't speak for industry, but I think people like the sort of old fashioned black and white. And as you say, like across the page, not in columns. This sort of, to me, looks more like a pamphlet, like a flyer, or a page of a book about people who work at whatever place. It's not quite as easy it's not in a familiar format, even though it's, sort of pleasing to the eye. And you miss out on, in this case, we're missing out on a lot of information about this person. What are his strengths and experiences in, well, he's got skills. But in any case, so that's just another one. Here's one that is a decent example, I think. And so it has a first name at the top, last name. It has telephone number, the town, the email, and the LinkedIn address. You could use other things too, Twitter, whatnot. Probably a lot of people now are using a summary, like kind of short, maybe 3 lines or something like that, where you really pack in what your skills are. Okay. Then often people start with education at the top, but the longer, if you're in industry, that might go below work experience. And you want to include the place that you were at school and the degree. Usually it's on the left and the date is usually on the right. And then below that, related experience. Okay, the general standard format is to put the name of the company or the university or whatever at the top left. And below that is the job description that you have. And then over on the right is the date, the period that you worked. And you don't need to put like the 27th of June. You can just say, you can even say summer of 2020. And then you notice that here, what they do a nice job is, okay, the sort of rule of thumb is start these points with a verb that really shows you're doing something, but then write about your accomplishments and not just listing like skills. So here it's like contributed to the development of the Baltimore State of the Harbor report card, or down below, collaborated with teachers to create and implement new courses and curriculum ideas. Which included the canoe classroom. So this is quite a good setup. It's pretty basic, but you were describing. Just remember to describe what you've done, your accomplishments, and you can include some of your skills in these descriptions, like using C++ or using some software, or using a lab skill, or in the field. Any comments on that? Here's the last resume I'm going to show you is this one. It's just an example from the web. And I think it's quite good. The summary to me is a bit too long, just my impressions, but I like that it's got some core competencies identified, and then the work is really well described. One thing that I want to point out is, unfortunately, that their research shows, and you don't probably need the research to know this, but there are biases in how people are selected. One of them is based on names. And so people will tend to select people for interviews, generally sort of tend to, when the names seem more familiar to them. And because a lot of people in, say, universities are white Anglo, they might be just a little more open to names that are like, white Anglo typical names, and less so to a name that, say, is Hispanic or Indian or Chinese or Black culturally. And so some people have suggested that what they would do is put, if they want, that they would either, they might put their first name as an initial, and that even can take away, what gender you are, which there are biases there as well. I don't know what to say about it. I think like it's not nice to not have to hide things about yourself. So I find it the whole thing kind of disturbing, but I just wanted to suggest something that somebody, a Black colleague, suggested to a meeting we were at. Yeah, and if you have thoughts on that, I'd be interested. And then biases in letters of recommendation, and we will share with you some materials, but there are really terrible biases in letters in favor of men, in favor of white men, white Anglo men. and changing how people are framed when they are not a male or they are not white. These are written both by, in the case of male and female, both women and men will write really different letters about men and women, and we read them differently as well. So we interpret them differently. And so one thing I suggest, if you are going to be getting people to write letters of recommendation, is to learn about the biases, and we can share some materials with you that you can share with people, your letter writers, to help them understand, what this is about. There's even a web page where you can put your letter in and it'll tell you what biases, it'll calculate or sort of compute what biases you have. But I think it's really helpful to provide your letter writers with information that you want them to include in the letter or that they can include. So you kind of give them a little history of what you've done. You want to make sure you tell them about every single job you give their name for, because it's kind of disconcerting for people like me to get a phone call saying, oh, we're calling about a reference about Rocio. And I think, oh, I didn't even know she was applying for a job. And then I have to say, so what is the job? And then if I haven't heard from Rocio in 5 years, then I'm thinking, now, how do they fit? So you want to keep in touch with people that are your letter writers, as well as give them content. Steve or Aditya or anybody else, or anyone else want to chime in on any of that?
So Val, what you said was very, very important, because there has been also studies, I was going for an NSF grant, and NSF webpage had a bias thing, like selecting grad students, how names, how there was like 8,000, surveys done on this before they actually provided the data. But again, the white males were chosen, and if a white female was chosen, the salary was less than the male that was recommended. So there were biases that was all over, and NSF also recognizes that
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that NSF was, putting it out front like that, which is great. Yeah, the startup packages for faculty are different. There's a way of we read people and we think, well, we have biases. It's like, oh, well, he must be a responsible family man. Oh, she's distracted by her family. There are all these double standards like that. So yeah, thank you, Aditya. Elise, were you going to add anything?
I was thinking about it. I wasn't sure if Steve wanted to add something as well, but
Yeah, I was just going to add, in terms of the students and your social network and your professional network here, that it's very important to maintain that contact, as Val said. And I have students that ask me for letters. I have one student left here about 6 years ago, and he contacts me all the time when he applies for a new job and sends me his new resume, updates me on what he's been up to and whatnot, and tells me what he's applying for, and sends me a link to the application so I know what they're looking for and how to sort of craft my letter for him going forward on when he applies for new jobs. And I really appreciate that he does that, and he shows the maturity to maintain the network with me as well, to keep in contact with me from time to time and let me know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's hard work to do that, but he does a good job of it.
Yeah, it's constant. You have to do it constantly. And I agree. And thank you for relating that. I can tell you that not very many people do that. And I mean, one thing you can do is, like, for example, if you're at a conference or something, you can send a PDF of your poster. Like, let's say you're giving a poster, a talk here, send a PDF to people who are your letter writers and say, hey, just wanted to tell you I'm at the NABG right now. Just gave my talk, and it went well. Here's a picture of me on the Zoom call, and it's like, it keeps you alive in their minds, and it helps them be excited about what they're going to write letters about. Plus, they can be mentors for you. So here's some common. So now moving into some other things. Here's some common mistakes. So you think that it won't happen, but it does. Like, typos can be just a real turnoff. Again, listing duties instead of your accomplishments. one that is very annoying, I find when I'm reading resumes for whatever job that I'm helping to choose somebody for, if it has way too much information that's just not relevant to the job, and I have to really sift and sort through it to find the information that's relevant to the job. Having too little information or too generic, and then again, the poor layout. And here's some of tips that I wanted to throw out there. So choose your own headings to highlight things like, remember, hobbies, you want to turn those into various skills and experience. Then you want to prioritize the sections according to the job. So if it's a teaching job, prioritize those skills. If it's a programming job, move that up in your resume. Include volunteer work and other things under leadership experience, because it's really, it sounds more impressive than volunteer work, even though they're, it's the same work, but it is showing leadership because you're giving back and you're going above and beyond. Remember to include awards, professional development, career development, things you go to, like you could even put this one in this very workshop into your resume if you want to add something that shows that you are interested in improving yourself, and also including information on your diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, whether those are within a science club at school or something, or if it's in the personal realm, it's still valuable for people. They still value this. And please chime in, anybody who wants to add any. Okay, so next, cover letters. This is another one where it's really fun to read examples, because then you think, oh my God, like they're so terrible. So, and it helps you know how to write a better letter. So one of the things is to make sure you have the job ad in your hands or on the screen, and that you reread it all the time when you're writing your cover letter. Okay, cover letters are not always required. It sure doesn't hurt to submit a good cover letter, even if it's not required. It is important to include language from the job ad. And not only do some places have software that scans letters and application materials for words that are in the job ad, believe it or not. It's called buzzword bingo, somebody called it. But also, like at NCAR, where I work, National Science Center for Atmospheric Research, we have people who skim the applications and look for language from the job ad. And sometimes we find out, hey, that application by Jerry didn't make it in. What happened? Oh, we didn't think it was a good match. You want to make sure that you address, like, what are the requirements in your resume and your letter, like really highlight that you are seeing what they want and that you're going to help them out. You're going to be a good match. And then again, give evidence. So here's an example of a letter, and I'm just going to give you a minute to read it. And when you are ready, just unmute your mic and dive in if you want to make any comments about this letter. What would you change, or what do you not like, or what do you like about this letter, cover letter for a job application?
So for what I know for cover letters, is not necessarily, you're not supposed to say, oh, read my resume, or like, refer to your resume in a sense of like leaving details out. I've heard cover letters are more of a way to go more in depth in your experience, to complement your resume, and not necessarily explain why you're good for the job, but get more into detail about what your skills are and experiences that you've had that do apply to the job.
Oh yeah, thank you. That's a really, really good description, I think, of a cover letter. Yeah, the first cover letter I wrote of importance in my life, I think, was I basically repeated everything that was in my resume, but then I rewrote it and I really tried to speak to what they were looking for and kind of providing the information that's not in the resume. So kind of what you were saying. Thank you, Diana. Anyone else? Is it a good letter? What would you change? How about who it's addressed to? Could you change that? Would you change it?
You could change it. You can, if you don't necessarily know the person's name, maybe you can change it to hiring committee, or know which department you're applying for. That's probably as direct as you can get. But if you can look up people's names, then might as well put someone's name.
Yeah, apparently it helps. And so you can also call or email and ask, to whom would I address a cover letter? And they'll hopefully give you a name, or they might say, please address it to this person and the hiring committee. Okay.
Yeah.
I think another one that's the most obvious to me is the typo, North Carolina is misspelled. And then the abbreviation, they hope to see you soon, that CU part.
Yeah, too informal and sloppy, right?
Mhm.
And 3 exclamation marks. Elise?
They also have 2 different positions. This PRTM of North Carolina, and then in the 3rd paragraph, they actually say would be thrilled to work at the University of North Carolina. So I don't know if that's a department within that, but it doesn't seem like it. So also make sure that you are right about which job you're applying to in your cover letter.
Yeah. And, people actually write to the wrong, like they'll put the wrong agency or company name in there. We had a really high up position somebody applied to at NCAR. They put like, I would be so delighted to work at NOAA. And it's like, no, well, this is not NOAA, this is NCAR. You notice too that in the 2nd paragraph, it's really vague. It's like generic, like I have a lot of great experience. That doesn't tell anybody very much. And this job's what I want. It's not what they want.
So the cover letter is kind of very shallow. So it doesn't really specify the skills as applicable as regards to the job. So it just says, as my resume shows, I have a lot of great experience. It's not really detailed. It's kind of very shallow. I don't think
right. And it's sort of like, in a way, if you do something like this, it's so shallow that all you're saying is like, please see my resume, really. And this one's kind of annoying as well, you're right. It's a lost opportunity to be more, to convey that you are the person they want for this job, that you can really help them out. There's grammatical here, like, because I have all the skills you need is not a sentence, and it's too much focused on this person. Thank you, Olan Rewaju. So a bad cover letter, just in summary, might have the same content as a resume. It might be too generic, have typos, focus on how great this is for you, and it doesn't really say what you can do for them. And here's a piece of data from some study that half of the recruiters will reject a generic letter if you're sending out 400 letters to jobs, you can't customize them and people can tell, So here's another one. See what you think about this one. Dear Mr. Williams, recording and analyzing data from marine biological procedures is just one area where I excel. Extensive experience in planning and undertaking lab-based experiments and research activities is my forte. Bringing this forward, I would like you to consider me for a marine biologist position at Resourced Earth. Let me highlight some of the areas of my expertise. And they have these bullet points with some details about what the person's done. And then with a vast plethora of information regarding the behavior, et cetera, I am positive that you will find me to be a great contributor in both the research and experimental areas. I will be in touch for a meeting time soon, and if needed, I can be contacted. Well, have at it. What would you criticize in this one? Is it better than the last one? Is it?
So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of better than the last one, but it's not really. But looking at the closing stage, he said, I will be in touch for a meeting soon. So the recruiter is supposed to be the one to be in touch, not you.
Yeah, right.
So it's more like a command tone, like, so it's better than the first one because of some details, the skills and stuff there, but it's not really, hasn't really captured the whole thing that it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a bit like repeating the resume with those bullet points. It's also bragging like vast plethora of information, like they're so knowledgeable. It's kind of a turnoff. And you will, I'm positive you will find me to be a great contributor. And then being a little bit too pushy, like I will be in touch for a meeting time soon. That's too pushy. You don't tell them that you're going to contact them to meet. You say, please contact me. Any other thoughts?
Well, the part you will actually skip, that part is even more interesting, leads to that plethora of data. Conducting species inventory and testing and monitor sea creatures exposed to pollutants. How? And then collecting and testing ocean samples and preserving specimens and samples of unknown species. I mean, he's vague all the way through.
That's true.
With plethora of vagueness.
Yes. Yeah, that is, you're right. You're right. See, I got fooled by it a little bit.
It's equally bad.
You saw the buzzwords. They hit all the, you saw conduct, collect. You're like,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly. I was like, okay, yeah, they do something. That's
I
right.
agree. Very
Yeah.
I do
Equally
think
bad.
sounds like the CV is the best, or sorry, the cover letter is the best place to address like the actual like job posting outline, like expected requirements, right? And make it really specific versus like your resume
Yeah,
being very
so.
like,
Well, I think
it's
it's
your
really,
experience. So you can
it's-
address the points that are made in the job posting here.
Yeah, and they might say no cover letter, in which case you have to do it in the resume or CV. But I agree, and basically the first paragraph you want to kind of say what you're applying for and who you are, and your enthusiasm can be really short, and then then you want to start addressing what they're looking for and giving evidence. So you might have like 2 or 3 more paragraphs and say in terms of, and then list the things that they're looking for, like experience researching the oil beds of off of Texas. I have worked in da 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 and give examples, and I collaborated with, and pull in the words from the job ad into your and start with the paragraph, like that one is the meatiest. First one is like, what is the main thing that they're looking for? And then the second paragraph could be like secondary importance, and then third, the length of the letter. People are always like, oh no, that's, people sort of say the same about letters and about resumes. It's kind of like somewhere around 1 page, sometimes longer, depends on the job. So in a good cover letter, you want to really give examples and show your interest. Use the terms, like you wouldn't know, maybe you shouldn't, but you should use the terms and the language from the job ad. Try to really figure out what that, like, research the place you're applying to and see what do they do. Like if it's a department that you want to go to grad school, what are their Friday seminars about? Is it about climate change? Is that something they really care about? Then connect with that. So one thing too, I just want to point out, if before you apply for something, think about, is it a job that you really want? And if you got it, would you take it? And maybe you just need a job, but if you really don't think you would like it, then maybe don't apply to it, because it kind of stinks if you end up getting it. Let's see. So bottom line is tailor your materials to the job. Okay, so part 2 is we're going to do networking and elevator speeches, and then some tips on finding jobs and exploring careers. But first, I'm going to suggest let's see, it's 5-minute, 10-minute break for, how about a 5-minute break? Does that sound okay?
I say yes.
That sounds good.
Okay, so we'll see you in 5 minutes. Go stretch and do what you need to do, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. Okay, so, all right, so what about networking? You always hear people say, oh, it's the thing you got to do, network, network, network. It's like, well, what is that? So it really is building relationships. It's a bit like what Steve was talking about, how having a student call, email or call, every year or whatever with a photo or a bit of news about, or, I'm applying for this job or this scholarship. That is maintaining the relationship in your network. And you can rely on people who are faculty, professionals, each other, peers. Peers are a wonderful source, and people in the community. Could be coach or a religious leader or family member. And the network really can help you with, among other things, like giving you support, giving feedback, resources, ideas, helping you make decisions, and kind of mentor you on the long-term planning. And also introducing you to others. So here's some pictures. The bottom left one, I think, Steve, you'll remember this. I think this is from, it's a few years ago. It was a session that you held at the NABG, and I think in Atlanta.
Yeah, this looks like Atlanta to me.
Yeah. And also the lower middle one. So there are two people who are going to be with me. Olamide Dada, who is a part of the NAGB leadership, and he'll be on one of the panels. And Jordan Allen, he's a grad student now, and he's going to be on a couple of panels that we have going on tomorrow. And they are both former interns that worked in an internship that I was running. And so we are always networking with each other, and then we kind of introduce each other. And you'll see Melissa Burt, on the right. She is the lower right. She is on the panel on Friday, and she's now a dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Colorado State University. So that's kind of why we want to do the networking. It's like to help us be supported. And that's particularly important if you're a minority in a majority setting. So with respect to the jobs, so what is interesting is that most employers look for people who are looking for jobs in the exact opposite way that most people looking for jobs look for them. So a job hunter might start with a resume and apply to a job posting on Indeed or Monster.com or some other website. Then there's the idea that I was showing, I'll show you a bit later, about searching the web for issues and things to work on. And then ideally at the top here, like working as a temp or a contractor. And like I started as a temporary part-time person at NCAR, filling in for somebody who was on maternity leave. And about a year later, I got hired as a permanent employee. Okay, employers will tend to hire from within. They know people who work, where they work, or they'll want to hire somebody who they know or a colleague knows. They will look for evidence of what the person can do, and then eventually use job ads and interviews, telephone or video, and then sort of in the last resort do the resumes. So what you want to do is kind of come at it more like an employer, like try to get in as a person who's looking for work. You want to kind of get in the door with your connections, and rather than just applying to job postings. A lot of jobs are never posted. Lots of jobs are never posted.
Yeah, I actually received my position working with Val through a recommendation that came from the network that I joined at the University of Rhode Island, a Women of Color network. So, they're sharing things that you may not otherwise see if you're just doing a generic search, which is advised so that you can get a lay of what is out there for the jobs and how much you might relate to them. But definitely if you can network, be a part of an organization that has people that are willing to share, that's a really positive way to go.
Yeah, and ask for them to introduce you to people. Thanks, Elise. So how can we network? Well, if you participate in events like this one, like now we have met some of you through this workshop, and the NAGB, BG, you'll be meeting more people. When you do meet people, ask them questions about their work, and then they will feel like they're engaged. People like to talk about their own work. Shows that you're interested, that you're smart, and things like that. Practice a very, very short elevator speech to introduce yourself, and we'll do more of that in a minute. And also share your contact information and get theirs, and then ideally follow up with an email thanking them, initially saying, thanks for chatting, the other day at the conference. I appreciated hearing about your project on such and such. And, here's my resume, or here's a project that I did, poster, and I look forward to keeping in touch. It can be just as little as that, but you're building a network. And then if later you write to them and say, hey, I'd like to learn more about your project, or, I'm looking for work, then you've got that little connection. So here's a recipe for an elevator speech. So what I'd like you to do is to take a piece of paper or something in your computer where you can just write down a couple of points, and even just some keywords or sentences. So you want to start, basically the layout of an elevator speech is to introduce yourself. And then if you're talking about research, let's just assume that you're at a conference, a scientific conference, which you are, and that you want to share about your research and kind of connect with people to find out who should you talk to about getting a job or about grad school. So in this case, you want to start with the big picture, like I study the sun, or I study the oil fields in Western Texas. And then you want to say, why is this important? And this is important because, as you know, we all rely on fossil fuels. And then what is the research you're doing, a little more specifically? And again, why is that important? So the why is it important? You want to do the beginning and the end. And then maybe what would you do next? So take a minute and just try to write down a couple of points about your own. And you could say, like, I'm currently working on this project on the shale in some part of Texas, but I'm really interested in getting into wind energy, and I'm looking for avenues to explore that, because I feel like that's important to me to be working in renewables, for example. So you want to assume that you have a smart listener, someone who wants to tune in, but someone who doesn't know anything or not very much about your topic. Really avoid jargon. It's really hard to avoid jargon because it becomes language to ourselves, but it might be totally unfamiliar to somebody else. And don't get into the weeds. You only have 30 seconds or 45 seconds. You can't really get into it. I like to use a really short time, like 30 to 45 seconds, because even in a minute, people can get too buried into the details. Okay. And, one example, I'll just give you an example. I had a student, an intern, and I was, had in workshops, and she gave her elevator speech. The first speech was something like this. She said, I'm working on designing a frame for a lens in a telescope that will be used to look at the sun. And so I use this software called Material Works to design this lens frame. And that's what I'm working on. And the telescope is in Hawaii. And by the end, it's like, well, that sounds pretty boring, right? By the end, her talk went more like this. I study the sun, and the sun is really important because its magnetic energy impacts our communications of our cell phones and emergency, communications. So, for example, solar interference impacted during Hurricane Harvey in Houston. It messed with the first responders' communication. So I'm working on helping to improve our understanding of the sun by improving an element of a solar telescope, in particular, a frame for a particular lens. So it's actually flipping it. It's like starting with the sun. Why is that important? Why should they care? You know, it's like, it's more interesting than just a frame that they're working on. Okay. Right. So now we're going to do a short breakout group. It's going to be pretty short. And so the idea is that, okay, you get the timer out and we're going to help with the timing. We're going to pair people up into breakout rooms. Then one of you will give your elevator speech, and you'll have 45 seconds. Then when that's up, then the other person gives feedback for 1.5 minutes. Start, please, with giving some positive feedback. What did you like about the person's elevator speech? Okay. And then we want to do it again, want to do it one more time, the whole thing, so that you get practice. And then swap roles and repeat. Okay. Are there any questions about that? Okay. Now I'm just trying to find how to make, how to make breakout groups. I think maybe I need to stop sharing. I'm not sure. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to say 9 breakout rooms. Okay. So you should get an invitation to a breakout room.
Are we also doing it? Jay?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Um, Juliet or Trayvon, are you having problems, or maybe you're not there?
I'm having malfunctions with my iPad right now.
Oh,
Can you-
okay.
Yes, I have bad service right now.
Okay. All right. If you want to, you can practice on me, but no pressure.
Okay, so I just ask you the questions, or how would this?
So you would give me your elevator speech. So
Okay.
introduce yourself and maybe you know what you're working on.
Okay. Well, my name is Trayvon Boyd. I'm currently a graduate from Hardin Simmons, and I'm a geology and environmental science major. And I am more in tune with environmental science and hazards, and how can we help prevent those and have sustainable interventions with areas around us.
Okay, and in what particular area of
West,
environmental science?
in
Oh.
West Texas.
Oh, okay. And in what kind of area of environmental, like science?
More as in I would say more as into the waste pollution.
Oh, okay. Hang on, I'm just going to move somebody from one room. Let's see. So Timmy, oh, Timmy is also connecting. Okay. So waste of and like urban waste or waste from industrial kind of.
More into industrial waste.
Okay, okay. So so I thought your message was clear about what you're doing and where you're at, and I like that it was short also. I think if you can maybe give more, like be more sort of enthusiastic or explain to me why is it important to make it sustainable or to care about the waste, that would be, I think that would be good. Can you do it again? Pretend you're meeting me for the first time and say like, oh, so hi Trevon, so tell me about yourself.
Sorry, man, I keep cutting off.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just actually I'm trying to assign somebody who. Um, Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay. So I was going to say, did you hear what I was saying? Oh gosh, I'm just going to have to move people. I don't know what to do here because it's like I don't know if people have a lot of problems with their internet because it seems like they're kind of falling off and falling on again. So Nabil, are you there?
Yes.
Hi, did you want to move into a room? I'm not sure what's going on with these breakout rooms. It
Yeah,
seems like people are getting kicked out and whatnot.
yeah.
Shall I move you back into that room too? With Elise?
Okay, sure. But we did finish like.
Oh, you did.
our-
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. I see. And Happiness, did you finish in your group?
Shares with me.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So I'll send a message out saying, saying to please wrap things up soon. Did you, how did it go, Nabil?
It is good. I couldn't like fully hear, but it is good. Like
Okay.
she introduced herself and I introduced myself.
Oh, okay. Did you get feedback?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna send people a notice that the breakout rooms are closing. Yeah, and it's something that it's pretty hard to do. I find it quite hard to do, like to give my elevator speech, say, what do I do? It's just hard to articulate sometimes, and it's hard to explain why it's important or to remember to explain why it's important.
Yeah.
But it's something that like you'll probably get to do it a few times this week at this conference.
That's nice. I was preparing one for the Houston Student Expo next week.
Oh, which expo is it?
Houston Student Expo. It's at the Regency Green Hotel by Katy Freeway.
Good for you. Yeah. So can you give me your 30-second speech while we wait for people to come back, Nabil? Tell me about yourself.
My name is Nabil Mohammadi. I finished my undergraduate studies at the University of Houston in geophysics this May. Currently, I'm working on thin section image analysis, where I take thin sections of samples of different rock samples from Gulf of Mexico and in the Nanushuk Formation in Alaska. And then I run them through ImageJ, which is an open source software, and then estimate permeability and porosity, which are two of the most important characteristics when characterizing any reservoir. And then I look forward to presenting my research at the International Meeting of Applied Geoscience and Energy later this month in Denver.
Oh, cool. In Denver. Well, hope you get to come. That was very good. I think one thing I would add is why it's important what you're doing. Why does it matter what the water permeability is in these rocks, and how is that contributing to somebody who's, you're sitting on the bus talking to somebody and they'll say, so why are you doing that? And so you can
it's like a huge difference between 3D, like when you have 3D samples and you do 3D image analysis, like that's like a 3D scan is like $2,000. This is only like $500. That's like a big difference.
But why do this? Like, what's the bigger picture? Is it to help find gas, or is it to?
Yes.
Okay.
Reservoir characterization to find oil and gas.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So just remembering to say why it's important. I think it's all of us forget to highlight that because we think, well, of course, why it's.
Yeah, I usually have like either former engineers or like actual currently working industry professionals at the conferences. So I tend to assume.
Yeah. Okay. I see. So they know. So any comments? Like, how did that go? Aditya, how did that go for you?
So our was a little bit of a trial and error. One of my teammates had to figure out Zoom because didn't have a mic, but that got solved. So that was an achievement. And we were able to do 2 more people. It was very good.
Oh, good. Yeah, the Zoom, I don't know what's going on, but people were being moved around by Zoom, or maybe I don't know quite what was happening. So hopefully you got to introduce yourself, everybody. And
I'm already known.
Let's see, I guess, Oyero, how was your experience? Oyero, Sekinat?
Yeah, I'm here. It was really great hearing other people talk about themselves, and although the time was not enough for me to actually do my to finish up, yeah.
Okay.
So it was really a great one.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I was hoping to do another round of this, but I think we don't have time, but I hope that you practice with each other in, future. Well, when you're in the future, breakouts, or with your roommate or whoever.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Okay, and then I'm going to continue. If I can get back. Oh yeah, so, okay. So the last section I want to talk about is exploring jobs and careers, what's out there. And so one thing to do is to join email lists that share jobs in fields that are of interest to you. One of them, there's one called the Earth Science Women's Network, and you don't have to be a woman to join this job network. And there are a lot of jobs posted in that. They tend to be more academic, I think. You can search Twitter. I would get onto Twitter if you're not, and you can search for jobs there. It's more timely. People will present things like, hey, I need a field assistant like now. And, then you get it right away. So there are some right there. We can share we'll share these slides with anybody who wants. At least maybe in the meantime, you could put in the chat the link to the Google spreadsheet where people can sign up with their email if you want me to send you the slides and all of that. And then searching the big job sites, you can find actually pretty cool jobs on them if you have some good keywords. It's good to play around with the keywords. So LinkedIn, so this is something that I, 10 years later, I'm still trying to kind of figure out, but I'm sort of getting a little bit of the hang of it. But people will Google you if they're trying to decide whether to take you for a job or for a grad school or something. And it helps if you have a LinkedIn page profile. So it's free. It's actually super easy to fill it out. Apparently having a photo of yourself helps people to connect better. So do include a photo of yourself. And then you can put a banner in the background. So I put a banner that I was trying to show the kind of work that I do. So I work with, with college students on learning how to do research and that kind of thing. And it'll ask you lots of questions like, where did you go to school? And what's your employment history? And then it helps you fill it out. So, and here are some that you can check out, these people, including mine, just to see. And also it helps you write a summary, even like it'll take your information and LinkedIn will write a summary that you can then edit. So one thing that, academics are, unfortunately, we're not very well informed about jobs that are out in the world, but we sort of talk about the jobs out in the world outside of university as the alternative career path. But actually, numbers wise, academia is the alternative career path. Very, very, very few people end up becoming professors. And the good news is that most people in the sciences and STEM fields are actually really happy in rewarding jobs that are not in the universities. And so that includes sectors like the government and private sector, local government, federal government, private companies like environmental consultants, industry, insurance companies. And some of these are really growing areas of employment. So ever since I stopped working at a university, I have been trying to educate myself about what jobs are out there because it's hard to find out. So I have a good tip. We have a good tip for you that I'll show you in a minute. So at the same time, so what you want to do is like, even though people at the universities might say, oh, you're going to do a PhD, aren't you? Oh, you're going to do a postdoc, aren't you? It's like, well, even if you decide you do want to do those things, make sure to be aware of what else is out there, because even if you do the PhD and the postdoc, there's no guarantee that you will get a job in academia. So you want to know and be comfortable knowing that there are other jobs out there. Also, it's really valuable to do other kinds of work like volunteer work, teaching, being on committees, things like that, because it is great for networking and it's great for your resume. And it's a way that people see that you have these skills of organizing things and working with people. Does anybody want to add anything to this? Elise or anybody?
I would just say there are so many jobs out there, and it can be really daunting to even start looking, because you don't know until you're there. Like I thought I wanted to work in policy in the government until I did it, and I was like, nope. But it helps you figure out what it is that you can pinpoint, what skills you want to use, what personal values you have that you want to bring to a job. All of those things are important. So I think that might have been a little off topic, but
no, it was perfect. And it's true. Figuring out what you don't like is also useful. And any job pretty much is a learning experience where you gain some experience. I was really, truly 47 when I found my dream job. I don't mean to be discouraging. It's more like, you try out different things and evolve and learn. And okay, so here's the trick that I want to share with you. So you can find out what's out there. Pardon?
No, sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, are you sure? Go ahead.
No, I wanted to say that, sometimes networking is very important for jobs. Some of the jobs don't go advertised, my job at Fort Valley was never advertised. They found me were looking for me, and I came over. So a lot of the things, when you are out there, if you let people know you're looking for employment, and networking helps.
Yes.
And you can make any job into your dream job, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, sometimes you don't take a job because you think won't be what you want. But, first of all, you can learn from it. And secondly, it might be that you can change it and you might be able to move sideways within the organization, things like that.
Yeah. And it's easy to have another job, get a job when you have a job. But when you don't have a job, and especially that first job, it's very difficult to come by. And especially if you have visa restrictions, if you are a international student here, like I was, I didn't have all the choices that my American friends did. I needed to get on a job because my student visa was running out. I needed to get into my, H1 and then to change that as quickly as possible. I couldn't do a postdoc because that would be another temporary visa. So there was a lot of restrictions that international students also go through.
Yeah, that's right. It's hard. But I agree with you. It's like, take a job and then you never know, like you might be able to turn it into something if you're not that sure you like it, or, I mean, it's early days, you don't really know what you're doing, but you're learning and you kind of like the people you work with. Like I'm trying to convince Elise to stay with us at NCAR because, and she's just checking it out. She's seeing how it's going, and and
this is my poker face.
Pardon?
Yeah. This is my poker face.
So she's, we're trying to give her learning opportunities and then listen to her about what she wants to do, and then hopefully we can, both make her happy and help us out. So here's a way to find out what is out there, because I get it that, when you're in university, you just don't hear about what's out there, like what jobs are out there, unless you're really lucky and you have a department that has a Friday seminar with alumni coming back every week to share their job experiences. So here's the deal. Go to the web and you put in the area of, can you see my mouse, by the way, or not? You can. So up here in the search bar, put in, this is where you want to mess around with, try out different words. So I did try out a few different words and I eventually landed on coastal geology, Texas. The big trick is to click on the news tab, not the all tab or not the images or maps, but the news. And what comes up are articles. So for example, here's one about Port of Corpus Christi in Texas wants to be a CCS hub. I had to look it up. It's carbon, I can't even remember now. Carbon something storage.
Is it capture and storage?
Yes, capturing carbon or carbon capturing storage. So there's that one. And then there's some about Hurricane Ida, supercomputers. So then down here, sinking situation in Houston. So these are current issues with people working on them. So now I'm going to click on, I'm not live on the web here, but I'm going to go to, I've got a screenshot of this top one and here it is. So I'm going to now go to that link and here's the link. And you can see that it's about decarbonization and it mentions a person. So now I can look up this person and see where they work. Is it appealing to me? Try to find out more about this project. Do I want to live here? And then it's about this carbon management and capture, like, oh man, this is super cool and interesting to me. I want to find out more. And maybe I'll reach out to these people, this person, and say, hey, I read about this project. I would like to learn more. Can you tell me how you're doing such and such? How did you decide on the threshold, or where are you getting the funding, or whatever? Get a conversation going. And, you want to introduce yourself. I am a grad student, I'm an undergraduate student, whatever. And, but maybe don't ask for a job in the first email. Just thinking that's probably a good way to go. Just want to develop those connections. And you also have that this is from a study from UT Austin. And so you can look that study up and then you can look up people there and you could write to professors and say, I am really interested in this and I'm looking, you can say to them, like, I'm looking for work. Do you have some some work in your lab or on your project. Sometimes they just need somebody to help out, and maybe you have the right training. Okay. Here's another one, a sinking situation in Houston, the Texas Gulf Coast. A recent report says geology and groundwater pumping have created a perfect storm for sinking cities. So click on that. And here's the beginning of the article. And here's the next part. And it has a link to this report in Science. You've got quotes from people. There's somebody called Jamie Flores, who is a program coordinator at Texas Water Resources Institute. You can look up this person, look up the institute, see what work they're doing, write and inquire about the projects and inquire if they need anybody to do work. You never know, labs. I got myself a postdoc doing that just by emailing a professor, former professor, and saying I was looking for a research job. And he had some money and a project. And here's Lucas Gregory, another person. This is, groundwater. Okay, so you start to get a feel for what's the problem, the topic. And if it interests you, dig in some more, look some more. And so I looked up here, Jamie Flores, and then that article at the top here, I looked that up, and it's like, here it is. It's a Science article about mapping the global threat of land subsidence. So you just kind of dig deeper and reach out to people, and they love to talk about what they do. And they also love to help out and give back and connect with young, energetic people. Okay, so that's just a tip I want you to remember is the news thing, the news tab, okay? Now, I think this is the last thing, is jobs with the federal government. It could sound really boring. To me, it always sort of sounded boring, but it turns out it's an awesome place to work. You get paid well, the benefits are awesome. So you get, may not matter to you now, but retirement funds that get put into your bank account, into your funds. You get time off, there's flexibility, it's interesting. You want to find a good place with good people, but all of these places are federally funded, and like the Smithsonian Institute. And then within those are things like the National Park Service, which has parks in offshore and in, all over the country, for example. So nowadays, when you want to get a job with the federal government, let's say somebody wants to hire you. Let's say you've been networking with somebody at the U.S. Geological Survey, and they're telling you about a job. You will have to create a profile on USA Jobs. All of the federal jobs go through this, and they don't stay on there very long, from what I understand, like a few weeks. Feel free to so there are many agencies that are participating in the United States Global Change Research Program, for example, and you can look that up some more. You want to do that, and I'm going to actually, Elise is going to put in the chat, she's going to upload a couple of one file, which is a guide that NOAA made, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, for undergraduate students and grad students for preparing one of these USA Jobs profiles. So in the chat, you'll be able to see that file, and we can send these to you as well if you sign up. And then, so that's the first thing, is create your profile in USA Jobs. And then I'm not going to go into detail here, but this is a slide that Gina Mason, who's from NOAA, provided, which has, and she gave a talk about this, like, how do you find a job on USA Jobs? The different government jobs have different like labels, like G12, G13, and different pay scales, a different experience. But it says, most important, review the vacancy questions. And then it says, do that before writing your resume. And I've heard this before, like when you're talking about your skills, if they ask you, rate yourself in terms of your abilities to, let's say, do statistics and statistical analysis. Answer on the high side. People say it's a good idea to answer on the high side so that you get selected And generally speaking, women will rate themselves more like as less qualified, even if they have the same qualifications. So just remember to promote yourself and be confident that you can learn it also. It says incorporate questions and the questions and your answers in the resume. This is how you will be scored. Sometimes you can determine which answer is the higher score. I have not done this, so I don't really know what this is exactly talking about, but this will be available to you, this slide. Now, there's another thing, which is that contractors are a huge employer for the federal government. Like something like a third of the entry-level people working for the government, federal government, are actually employed by a contractor that has a contract with the government. So we have a list of contractors that work with NOAA. And so Elise is going to put that in the chat for you, a file. I think you can upload files. So let's see. So anyhow, so you want to do is kind of have a connection with an office. So a specific office, and then ask them, like if you're talking to some geologists at the US Geological Survey, ask them who, which companies do they contract with? And then conduct informational interviews, which is basically where you call and ask, or you email and say, can I please have a conversation and to find out more about what you do? And it's giving yourself a free interview, but it's also, giving you information about what they do and whether it appeals to you. So again, we'll share these with you. I saw in the slides, Namika said, Valerie, you just inspired someone. Is that you? Hope so. All right.
You said you found your dream job at 47. So I said, that's why I said so.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
Oh,
at 47. Oh,
at 47. That's why I said so.
Okay. Well, thanks. That's good to hear. Okay, so just
I just wanted to double check if that link worked for anybody or not. I just wanted to double check before I added the other one.
Did the last one?
Yeah. So it's a document, but I just wanted to make sure.
It's not opening.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can upload or not. Sometimes I've been able to upload my computer. I'm going to just try and do that.
Yeah, because mine downloaded it to my computer, and then I was able to open it through Microsoft, but I don't know. Okay, thanks.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, good. Thanks for asking. So attached in the chat is the one pager about how to do this whole USA Jobs business, and then a NOAA list of contract companies, which you can investigate as well. So, but I think making the contacts is more important. So here, just a couple of final tips is to be prepared to work in entry-level positions. And, again, like hopefully if you work hard and go above and beyond and all those things, that you will have more opportunities to advance. But, there are people who are more experienced who will have jobs that are more senior and get paid more and all of that sort of thing. So it's just normal. It's normal. Another one is to use your first jobs to really develop those transferable skills that we talked about that are like the communicating well and collaborating and being responsible and things like that. If you do shortcuts or you're sloppy or whatever, you never know what's going to happen. Like somebody will say, yeah, but they didn't really do a good job on this thing. Or they might say, oh, they always put in so much effort and they're so conscientious. People do notice your effort. And for example, you have all stuck through this workshop, which is awesome. And I appreciate it. So let's see. And then finally, oh yes, to develop other areas of expertise and skills. So for instance, I was talking to a man, Peter Neely, who works at the Weather Channel, I think it's called. weather or something or other. And we said, how many undergraduates with meteorology degrees do you employ per year? Peter said, we employ 180 undergraduate, like graduates, people with undergraduate degrees every year but only a handful have meteorology degrees. Now, he said, if you had a degree in computer programming, economics, communications, something else, and an interest in meteorology, then your resume rises to the top. And I thought that was pretty shocking. And meteorology is very narrow, actually. But the idea is like, if you can learn, more statistics, for instance, and maybe some finance or graphic design or something else, these things come into your job. I get to do photography. I get to do simple graphics. I get to write proposals and write articles and to run workshops and things like that. So these different skills are really valuable. And just some final tips. Like it's really important if you're sending an email, that's important to read it a few times before you send it. It's amazing how much you can clarify when you edit. And also initiate meetings. Like if you're in grad school, initiate meetings with your committee or your advisor and make it regular and frequent. Offer to organize seminars. And then finally is like email people after the meetings, and not only to thank them, but to say, okay, this is where we're at, and this is what I said I would do, and this is what Elise said she would do. And it really helps you be kind of organized. And then, oh yes, sorry, the connections. Update your LinkedIn profile or make one, and keep your social media clean. So, like if you're partying or something, put that on a different account than what you might have available with your regular name, for example. Or better yet, don't put it on there. So here are our contact emails. And just one last thing I want to say is that's really important is to look for kind cultures. Look for places where people are happy working, where they like the people they work with. It makes a huge difference. You can have two jobs that are identical, and one can be like a toxic workplace with horrible managing, and the other one can be just fabulous, same kind of work, but totally different experience. I had that experience. My previous job, I really didn't like the environment, and now I love where I'm at, and I'm so much happier. So I think it's important, particularly when you're talking about being a person of color going into a majority white space. How do you navigate that? And we have a panel on tomorrow. Elise is on it, actually. The second panel is called Navigating and Finding Support in Majority White Spaces. So yes, looking for kind, supportive cultures. So that's all from us. Does anybody want to add anything? Like, I really appreciate Aditya and Steve. We really appreciate your contributions. Thank you so much. And if you have any other last tidbits you want to share, please do.
You did great, Val. You covered it all. It was a great session. Even I learned something.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Thanks to Val and Elise for your work here. This is really great. And thanks for participating and supporting NABG.
Oh, sure. You're welcome. And yes, thank you everybody for participating.